Long before modern billionaires made headlines, before skyscrapers and stock markets ruled wealth, there was a different kind of power in Britain. It was quiet, it was inherited, and it was built into stone walls that still stand today. This is the world of old money, where wealth did not appear overnight, but slowly grew over centuries, passed carefully from one generation to the next. Among all the great aristocratic families of Britain, few names carry as much weight as the Cavendish family, better known as the Dukes of Devonshire. Their story stretches back nearly 1,000 years, reaching into the very foundations of English history. While many noble families faded away or lost everything to time, war, or poor decisions, the Cavendishes did something rare. They survived. More than that, they adapted. Instead of becoming frozen relics of the past, the Cavendish family learned how to balance tradition with change. They preserved ancient customs, protected priceless estates, and at the same time learned how to manage land, money, and influence in the modern world. Their homes are not just beautiful mansions, they are living symbols of how old money truly works. In this episode of Old Money Mansions, we step inside the grand estates of the Cavendish family. These are homes shaped by power, patience, and planning. Each estate tells a different chapter of a long family story, one filled with politics, ambition, art, and survival. And no place tells that story better than their most famous home of all. Chatsworth House, the crown jewel of the Cavendish Empire. If the Cavendish family has a heart, it beats inside Chatsworth House. Located in the rolling countryside of Derbyshire, Chatsworth is not just a mansion, it is a statement. For nearly 5 centuries, it has served as the ancestral home of the Cavendish family, standing proudly as one of the most admired country houses in all of Britain. The story of Chatsworth begins in the year 1549, when Bess of Hardwicke, one of the most remarkable women of her time, and her second husband, Sir William Cavendish, acquired the estate. Bess was not born into extreme wealth, but through intelligence, ambition, and strategic marriages, she rose to become one of the richest women in England. Her vision helped lay the foundation for what Chatsworth would become. From that moment forward, generation after generation of the Cavendish family made Chatsworth their home. Over 17 generations, the house evolved, expanded, and transformed, reflecting the changing tastes, values, and ambitions of its owners. Each duke left his mark, turning Chatsworth into a living timeline of British aristocratic history. Unlike many grand estates that were abandoned or sold, Chatsworth remained firmly in family hands. That continuity is rare, and it is one of the reasons the estate feels alive rather than preserved like a museum exhibit. A house built to impress and endure, Chatsworth House is officially listed as a Grade 1 historic building, placing it among the most important architectural treasures in the country. Its size alone is overwhelming, but what truly sets it apart is its balance of grandeur and refinement. Inside, the house is filled with one of Europe's greatest private art collections. Paintings, sculptures, books, and decorative objects collected over centuries fill its halls. These collections did not come from a single era or style. Instead, they reflect the wide-ranging interests of different Cavendish family members, each adding pieces that spoke to their own time. One of the most influential figures in Chatsworth's history was William Cavendish, the first Duke of Devonshire. He played a key role in the Glorious Revolution of 1688, a turning point that reshaped British politics and limited royal power. His political importance elevated the family's status and helped secure their place among Britain's ruling elite. Because of this influence, Chatsworth became a gathering place for the powerful and the famous. Its guest books read like a history textbook, royal visitors, and historic moments. In the 17th century, King William III and Queen Mary VII visited Chatsworth, confirming its importance as a royal-approved estate. These were not casual visits. Royal appearances sent a clear message: the Cavendishes mattered. More than a century later, a young Princess Victoria, who would soon become Queen Victoria, attended her very first formal adult dinner at Chatsworth in 1832. That moment alone tied the estate to the future of the British monarchy. Over time, politicians, artists, intellectuals, and aristocrats all passed through its doors. Chatsworth was not only a home, but also a stage where history quietly unfolded. In modern times, its beauty reached an even wider audience through film. Chatsworth has appeared in major productions such as Pride and Prejudice and The Duchess, allowing millions of people around the world to glimpse the elegance of old money life, preserving the past for the future. By the late 20th century, maintaining a house of this size became a serious financial challenge. Rather than selling pieces of the estate or allowing it to decay, the family made a strategic decision. In 1981, the Chatsworth House Trust was established, a charitable foundation designed to preserve the estate for future generations, while opening it to the public. This move allowed Chatsworth to remain financially sustainable without losing its identity. Today, Chatsworth is still a family home. Peregrine Cavendish, the 12th Duke of Devonshire, and his wife Amanda Cavendish continue to reside there. Their presence ensures that the house remains connected to its living history, not just its past. An estate, the size of a small kingdom. Chatsworth is not just a single house surrounded by gardens. It is a vast estate covering approximately 35,000 acres. This land is divided into several sub-estates, each serving a different purpose and reflecting the family's careful management style. At the center lies the main estate, spanning over 12,000 acres. This area includes the house itself, the surrounding parkland, and charming villages such as Baslow and Pilsley. The landscape here was shaped by legendary designers like Capability Brown, whose vision transformed the grounds into rolling lawns, gentle hills, and perfectly placed trees. The River Derwent winds through this landscape, adding beauty while supporting farming and wildlife. Nothing here feels accidental. Every path, view, and field reflects centuries of thoughtful planning, a living example of old money, stewardship. What makes Chatsworth truly remarkable is not just its beauty, but how it functions today. It is both historic and practical. Agriculture, tourism, conservation, and business all work together to support the estate. This balance is the secret of the Cavendish family's survival. Instead of clinging blindly to the past, they adapted. They respected tradition, but they also embraced innovation. That mindset allowed Chatsworth to remain vibrant rather than fading into memory. And this is only the beginning. In the next part, we will explore the lands beyond the house, the working estates, farms, and financial systems that keep Chatsworth alive in the modern world, revealing how old money truly sustains itself behind the scenes. The lands, wealth, and modern survival of Chatsworth. When most people think about old money, they imagine grand rooms, priceless paintings, and formal dinners under crystal chandeliers. But the true strength of families like the Cavendishes does not come from ballrooms or art galleries. It comes from land. For centuries, land has been the most powerful and reliable form of wealth in Britain. Unlike stocks or businesses that can collapse overnight, land produces income year after year. The Cavendish family understood this truth early on, and Chatsworth Estate is the perfect example of how land, when managed wisely, becomes a lasting source of power. Stretching across 35,000 acres, the Chatsworth Estate is not decorative excess. It is a carefully organized system, divided into multiple working regions, each with its own purpose. Together, these lands form an economic engine that supports the house, the family, and the surrounding communities. The main estate, beauty with purpose. At the center of everything lies the main estate, covering roughly 12,300 acres. This is the area most visitors see: the rolling parkland, the rivers, the villages, and the iconic views surrounding Chatsworth House. But beneath this postcard, beauty is careful planning. The land here was shaped over centuries by expert designers, including Capability Brown, whose influence transformed English landscapes forever. His philosophy was simple but powerful. Nature should look effortless, even when it is carefully designed. The sweeping lawns, scattered trees, and open views around Chatsworth were engineered to feel natural, calm, and timeless. The River Derwent flows gently through this area, providing water for wildlife, farming, and human settlement. It is not just scenic, it is functional. Waterways like this helped estates remain productive long before modern infrastructure existed. Villages such as Baslow and Pilsley sit quietly within the estate boundaries. These villages are not separate from Chatsworth. They are part of it. Local residents often work on the estate, farm its land, or support tourism. This relationship between the family and the community is one reason Chatsworth has avoided the resentment that sometimes surrounds aristocratic estates. The West Estate, wild, rugged, and protected. Moving west, the land changes dramatically. The West Estate, covering around 6,400 acres, stretches into higher ground near the Peak District and into parts of Staffordshire. This region is rougher, wilder, and less controlled than the manicured parkland near the house. Here, the focus shifts from display to conservation. The hills, moorlands, and open spaces support diverse wildlife and rare plant species. This land is less suitable for intensive farming, but it plays a crucial role in environmental stewardship. By protecting these natural areas, the Cavendish family helps preserve biodiversity, while also qualifying for conservation grants and environmental partnerships. This balance between preservation and income is a modern old money strategy. The land may look untouched, but it is carefully managed to serve both nature and sustainability goals. The Shottle Estate, dairy and daily income. The Shottle Estate, covering approximately 3,500 acres, represents a different side of Chatsworth's operations. This area is heavily focused on agriculture, particularly dairy farming. Dairy farms provide steady, reliable income. Unlike seasonal crops, milk production continues year-round, offering financial stability even during difficult economic periods. The fertile land here supports high-quality livestock, and the estate produces dairy products that supply both local markets and estate-run businesses. This type of farming may seem modest compared to palaces and paintings, but it is one of the reasons Chatsworth remains financially secure. Old money does not survive on luxury alone. It survives on consistency. The Staveley Estate, industry meets tradition. Near Chesterfield lies the Staveley Estate, spanning roughly 3,400 acres. This area reflects the Cavendish family's willingness to adapt to changing times. Unlike the purely agricultural lands elsewhere, Staveley includes industrial sites, woodlands, and arable farms. One of its most important features is Staveley Works, an industrial complex that has provided employment and income for generations. Rather than resisting industry, the Cavendishes integrated it into their estate system. This decision allowed them to benefit from economic growth while maintaining control over land use and environmental impact. Surrounding the industrial areas are forests and farms, creating a balanced landscape where production and conservation coexist. This blend of old and new reflects the family's long-term thinking. The Scarecliffe Estate, feeding the future. The largest sub-estate is Scarecliffe, covering an impressive 9,300 acres east of Chesterfield. This region is primarily dedicated to arable farming, meaning large-scale crop production. Here, modern agricultural methods meet traditional land stewardship. Crops are grown using sustainable techniques designed to protect soil health and ensure long-term productivity. Efficiency is key, but so is responsibility. Scarecliffe's vast fields help secure food production while generating dependable revenue. This income supports the maintenance of historic buildings, conservation projects, and public access across the wider estate. Once again, old money proves itself practical rather than flashy. A financial system hidden in plain sight. What makes Chatsworth remarkable is how seamlessly all these pieces fit together. Tourism brings millions of visitors each year. Farming produces food and income. Conservation attracts grants and partnerships. Retail shops, cafes, holiday rentals, and events generate additional revenue. Together, they form a self-sustaining system. This is the secret behind the Cavendish family's longevity. Instead of relying on a single source of wealth, they diversified long before the word became popular. If one area struggles, another supports it. This approach protects the estate from financial shocks and ensures stability across generations. The Chatsworth House Trust plays a key role in managing this complexity. By separating ownership, management, and preservation, the family ensures transparency and long-term planning, something many aristocratic families failed to do in the past. A living estate, not a frozen monument. Unlike estates that exist only for tourists, Chatsworth remains a working place. People live there, people work there. Decisions are made daily that shape its future. This is why Chatsworth does not feel like a relic. It feels alive. The Cavendish family's approach shows that old money is not about clinging desperately to the past. It is about understanding history, learning from mistakes, and preparing for the future. And this philosophy extends beyond Derbyshire. In the next part, we leave Chatsworth behind and travel north to one of the most breathtaking estates connected to the Cavendish dynasty. A place of rivers, ruins, and royal visits. Bolton Abbey. Land, legacy, and living history. After centuries of shaping Chatsworth into a masterpiece of land, wealth, and balance, the Cavendish family extended their influence far beyond Derbyshire. One of their most breathtaking and emotionally powerful estates lies hundreds of miles north, tucked deep into the green valleys of Yorkshire. This place is Bolton Abbey. Bolton Abbey is not simply another grand property. It is a landscape that feels ancient, spiritual, and deeply tied to the land itself. Rivers, ruins, forests, farms, and footpaths all blend together here, creating an estate that feels less like a mansion and more like an entire world. Covering an astonishing 33,000 acres, Bolton Abbey is one of the largest estates associated with the Cavendish family. Its size alone places it among the great landholdings of Britain. But what truly makes Bolton Abbey special is how it combines beauty, history, and daily life in a way few estates manage to achieve. How Bolton Abbey entered the Cavendish story. Bolton Abbey became part of the Cavendish legacy in 1748, not through conquest or purchase, but through marriage, one of the most powerful tools of old money. The estate entered the family through the union of Lady Charlotte Boyle, Baroness Clifford, and William Cavendish, who would later become the 4th Duke of Devonshire. This marriage merged vast lands, titles, and influence, strengthening the Cavendish position in British society. From that moment on, Bolton Abbey became a cherished northern anchor of the family's power. Each generation added its own care, improvements, and vision, ensuring that the estate was not only preserved, but also deeply loved. Today, Peregrine Cavendish, the 12th Duke of Devonshire, and his wife Amanda Cavendish continue to spend time at Bolton Abbey Hall, maintaining a living connection between the family and the land. A landscape that feels timeless. Bolton Abbey sits within the heart of the Yorkshire Dales, one of England's most dramatic natural regions. The land here is rugged but gentle, wild yet carefully managed. The estate includes rolling hills and open moorland, dense woodlands covering more than 1,500 acres, fertile farmland spread across 52 working farms, stone walls, bridges, and paths that feel unchanged by time. Flowing through it all is the River Wharf, a calm but powerful presence that shapes both the landscape and the rhythm of life on the estate. The river provides water, beauty, and a sense of continuity that links past and present. This combination of nature and structure is no accident. Over centuries, the Cavendish family shaped Bolton Abbey with restraint. Instead of forcing the land to submit, they worked with it. Royal guests and national importance. Like Chatsworth, Bolton Abbey has long attracted royal attention. One of its most frequent royal visitors was King George V, whose repeated stays confirmed the estate's importance within aristocratic and royal circles. Bolton Abbey was not merely scenic, it was respected. In more recent history, Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip visited Bolton Abbey Hall during the 2005 Royal Ascot events held nearby in York. These visits were symbolic, reinforcing Bolton Abbey's place as a trusted and prestigious setting for Britain's highest social circles. Despite these royal connections, Bolton Abbey never became stiff or distant. Unlike some estates that feel frozen in formality, this place retained warmth and accessibility. A magnet for walkers, thinkers, and dreamers. One of Bolton Abbey's most remarkable qualities is how open it feels. Every year, more than 400,000 visitors explore the estate. They come not for velvet ropes or glass cases, but for freedom. Bolton Abbey offers over 80 miles of public footpaths, including sections of the famous Dales Way. People walk here to think, to breathe, and to feel connected to something older than themselves. Perhaps the most famous feature of all is the estate's stepping stones, a playful yet nerve-testing crossing of the River Wharfe. For generations, visitors have lined up to test their balance, laughter echoing across the water as they leap from stone to stone. This sense of shared experience is rare on aristocratic estates, and it is one of the reasons Bolton Abbey remains so deeply loved. Staying on the estate. Bolton Abbey is not a place you rush through. It invites you to stay. The estate offers a wide range of accommodations, including cozy holiday cottages, converted barns, traditional farmhouses, countryside retreats. In addition to these homes, the estate manages around 46 properties, blending residential charm with commercial use. Office spaces, small businesses, and local shops all operate within estate boundaries, strengthening the regional economy. This approach reflects a key old money principle. Land must work for everyone, not just the family who owns it. The spiritual heart, Bolton Abbey, Priory. At the center of the estate stands its soul, Bolton Abbey Priory. Founded in 1154 by the Augustinian order, the priory once stood as a powerful religious center. Though it suffered greatly during the dissolution of the monasteries in 1539, the ruins remain hauntingly beautiful. Unlike many ruined abbeys, Bolton's priory never completely died. The Church of St. Mary and St. Cuthbert continues to operate today, serving the local community just as it has for centuries. Weddings, services, and quiet moments of reflection still take place beneath ancient stone arches. This continuity, ruins beside living faith, perfectly captures the spirit of Bolton Abbey itself. A community, not just an estate. What truly sets Bolton Abbey apart is its relationship with people. Farmers, tenants, visitors, and workers all play a role in the estate's daily life. Agriculture remains vital, supporting families who have worked this land for generations. Tourism provides income while encouraging appreciation rather than exploitation. The Cavendish family's careful stewardship has ensured that Bolton Abbey remains not only preserved, but alive. It is not a monument to wealth. It is a landscape shaped by responsibility, a northern pillar of the Cavendish legacy. Bolton Abbey represents something essential about old money at its best. It shows that power does not have to be loud, influence does not have to be cruel, and heritage does not have to be locked away. This estate breathes, it moves, it welcomes. And yet, the Cavendish story does not stop in England. In the next part, we cross the Irish Sea to a dramatic castle shaped by ambition, art, tragedy, and transformation, a place where the Cavendish legacy took on a bold new form. Lismore Castle, Power, Art, and the Irish Chapter. Of Old Money. While the Cavendish family's English estates reflect balance and restraint, their Irish home tells a slightly different story. This is where ambition grew larger, architecture became bolder, and history left deeper emotional marks. This place is Lismore Castle. Set high above the River Blackwater in County Waterford, Lismore Castle rises from the landscape like something out of a legend. Its towers, battlements, and dramatic silhouette make it feel more like a royal fortress than a country house. For more than 270 years, this castle has been woven into the Cavendish family's identity, becoming their most striking and theatrical residence. But Lismore's story is not just about beauty. It is about transformation, obsession, and how old money expresses itself differently across borders. How Lismore entered the Cavendish world. Lismore Castle became part of the Cavendish family in 1753, once again through marriage rather than conquest. The estate passed into Cavendish hands when Lady Charlotte Boyle, daughter of the 3rd Earl of Burlington and 4th Earl of Cork, married William Cavendish, who would later become the 4th Duke of Devonshire. This union merged English aristocratic power with Irish land, extending the family's influence beyond Britain. From that moment forward, Lismore became the Cavendish family's Irish stronghold. Unlike some estates that were treated as distant investments, Lismore quickly became deeply personal. It was a place where the family poured emotion, money, and imagination. Early improvements and lasting symbols. One of the first visible marks left by the Cavendish family came in 1775 when William Cavendish, the 5th Duke of Devonshire, ordered the construction of an elegant stone bridge over the River Blackwater. This bridge was more than a practical crossing. It was a symbol. It connected the castle physically and symbolically to the surrounding land, showing that the Cavendishes intended to stay. But Lismore's true transformation had not yet begun. The bachelor duke and a castle reborn. The most dramatic chapter in Lismore's history began in the early 19th century under William Cavendish, the 6th Duke of Devonshire, famously known as the Bachelor Duke. Unlike many aristocrats, the Bachelor Duke never married and had no children. Instead, he poured his wealth, time, and obsession into architecture, art, and estate building. And nowhere did his passion burn brighter than at Lismore Castle. Beginning in 1811, he launched an ambitious plan to completely reshape the castle. His vision was clear. Lismore would no longer be a quiet residence. It would become a statement of power, taste, and permanence. To achieve this, he enlisted some of the greatest architectural minds of the age. Architecture as obsession. The Bachelor. Duke worked closely with William Atkinson, an architect known for bold designs, and later with Sir Joseph Paxton, a man whose story mirrored old money's belief in talent over birth. Paxton began his career as a humble gardener. Through intelligence and creativity, he rose to become one of the most influential designers of the 19th century. His later masterpiece, the Crystal Palace, would astonish the world, but at Lismore, he helped shape something just as grand. Under their guidance, Lismore Castle was rebuilt in a lavish Gothic revival style. Towers rose higher, windows grew taller. Stone walls were reshaped using finely quarried Derbyshire stone, giving the castle a pale, commanding presence against the Irish sky. The result was not subtle. It was theatrical, romantic, and deliberately medieval in spirit. A castle made to impress. Inside, the transformation was just as dramatic. Rooms were filled with ornate plasterwork, heavy tapestries, carved wood, and rich fabrics. Ceilings soared, corridors stretched long and shadowed. Everything about Lismore was designed to overwhelm the senses. One of the castle's most remarkable features came later in the 19th century, when the Bachelor Duke commissioned A.W.N. Pugin and J.G. Crace to transform an old chapel into a grand medieval-style banqueting hall. At the heart of this hall stood a magnificent chimney piece, so impressive that it was displayed at the Great Exhibition of 1851, where it amazed thousands of visitors. Today, it still dominates the room, greeting guests with the same sense of awe it inspired more than a century ago. A gathering place for the world's elite. After the Bachelor Duke's death in 1858, Lismore Castle did not fade into silence. Instead, it continued to serve as a cherished family home and a gathering place for influential figures. In the 1930s and 1940s, the castle became the residence of Lord Charles Cavendish and his wife Adele Astaire, sister of the legendary dancer Fred Astaire. During this period, Lismore took on a new energy. Artists, performers, politicians, and thinkers passed through its halls. The castle became a bridge between old aristocratic tradition and modern cultural life. Among its many distinguished guests were members of the British royal family, leading artists, and even President John F. Kennedy, who was connected to the Cavendish family through his sister Kathleen Kennedy, known as Kick, who married into the family. These connections place Lismore at the crossroads of politics, culture, and global history, from private fortress to cultural space. In modern times, Lismore Castle has continued to evolve. While it remains a part-time Irish residence for the Duke of Devonshire, much of its future has been shaped by the next generation. Lord Burlington, the Duke's son, took a bold step in 2005 by transforming the castle's West Range into a contemporary art space known as Lismore Castle Arts. This decision reflected a new understanding of heritage. Instead of freezing the castle in the past, the family invited modern creativity inside its ancient walls. Contemporary exhibitions now sit beside medieval stone, creating a powerful dialogue between past and present. Parts of the castle have also been opened for group accommodations, allowing visitors to experience life inside one of Ireland's most extraordinary historic homes. A castle that still lives. Lismore Castle is not simply preserved, it is lived in, adapted, and reimagined. Its gardens bloom, its halls host voices again, its walls continue to change. This is what sets the Cavendish family apart. They do not treat heritage as something fragile and untouchable. They treat it as something alive, and yet, even this dramatic castle is only one piece of their vast legacy. In the next part, we return to England to explore a house shaped by politics, Palladian beauty, and quiet mystery. A place where power once met tragedy. Compton Place. Politics, power, and quiet. Mystery. After the dramatic towers of Lismore Castle, the Cavendish story returns to England, but this time, the style changes completely. Gone are Gothic battlements and medieval fantasy. In their place stands balance, symmetry, and quiet authority. This place is Compton Place. Located near Eastbourne in East Sussex, Compton Place does not shout its importance. It whispers it. The house sits calmly within its landscape, confident in its proportions and secure in its history. This was not a home designed to overwhelm visitors with size alone. It was built to signal taste, intellect, and political power. For the Cavendish family, Compton Place became a center of management, influence, and decision-making, especially during the height of Britain's political and imperial reach. How Compton Place became Cavendish property. Compton Place entered the Cavendish family in 1782, once again through marriage, a reminder of how old money quietly expands its reach. The estate became part of the family when Lady Elizabeth Compton married Lord George Cavendish, the second son of William Cavendish, the fourth Duke of Devonshire. This union brought land, prestige, and opportunity together under one name. Later, in 1858, the estate was firmly secured within the Cavendish lineage when William Cavendish, the seventh Duke of Devonshire, inherited Compton Place following the death of his cousin, the second Earl of Burlington. From that point forward, Compton Place became an essential piece of the family's southern holdings. From Jacobean manor to Palladian masterpiece. Originally known as Bourne Place, the house began life as a Jacobean manor. But its most important transformation came in 1726, when the estate was redesigned by the influential architect Colin Campbell. Campbell was one of the pioneers of Palladian architecture in Britain, a style inspired by ancient Roman ideals of symmetry, proportion, and harmony. Under his direction, Compton Place was reshaped into a refined classical residence. The redesign was commissioned by Spencer Compton, Britain's second Prime Minister, a man who understood how architecture could communicate authority. The house's clean lines, balanced facade, and restrained elegance sent a clear message. Power does not need decoration to be convincing. This architectural choice placed Compton Place among the most intellectually fashionable homes of its time. A house shaped by politics. Unlike estates known for leisure or retreat, Compton Place became a working center of political and estate management. Lord George Cavendish, who brought the house into the family, used it as a base for overseeing Sussex lands. Later, the seventh Duke of Devonshire turned Compton Place into a key administrative hub for the family's southern estates. Decisions made within these walls affected farms, villages, and livelihoods across the region. This was not just a beautiful house, it was a place where real power was exercised quietly and efficiently. Royal visits and high society. Over the years, Compton Place welcomed a number of distinguished guests, further cementing its status. Royal figures such as Queen Alexandra and King Edward VII visited the estate in 1892, reinforcing its place within elite social circles. These visits were not lavish public spectacles, but refined gatherings that reflected the house's discreet elegance. Compton Place was never meant to be a showpiece for crowds. It was designed for those who understood what it represented. Rooms that tell stories. Inside, Compton Place reveals layers of artistry and symbolism. One of the most striking features is the south elevation, designed by Colin Campbell and later enhanced in 1806 by George Cavendish, the first Earl of Burlington. The addition of a Doric peristyle gave the house a commanding yet restrained presence. The interiors are filled with exquisite plasterwork and stucco decoration, especially in the long gallery. Here, visitors find a rare stucco portrait bust of Colin Campbell himself, honoring the architect who shaped the house's identity. Perhaps the most famous room is the Duke's bedroom. This lavish chamber is decorated with classical stucco reliefs inspired by ancient myths, including Venus and Adonis. Originally prepared for a planned visit by King George II, the visit never took place, but the room's grandeur remained. Ironically, the room later hosted other royals, including King George VI and his daughters in 1946, proving that even unrealized plans can leave lasting legacies. The library stands out as well, still lined with its original leather wall coverings. Though later lighting choices dulled some of its atmosphere, the room remains a powerful symbol of learning, tradition, and continuity, tragedy and suspicion. Not all of Compton Place's history is serene. The estate became shadowed by mystery during the time of the 10th Duke of Devonshire, whose sudden death in 1950 raised questions that lingered for decades. His passing became associated, at least in public rumor, with the controversial figure Dr. John Bodkin Adams, a physician later suspected in multiple suspicious deaths. Though no definitive conclusions were reached, the association added an unsettling layer to Compton Place's story, reminding us that even the most refined estates can witness dark chapters. Reinvention under pressure. By the mid-20th century, the Cavendish family, like many aristocratic households, faced crushing death duties, heavy inheritance taxes that forced difficult decisions. To survive, Compton Place had to adapt. For a time, the house was leased and used as a finishing school for young women, and later as a language school. Among its students was Benazir Bhutto, who would later become Prime Minister of Pakistan. These changes marked a shift. The house was no longer just a private residence. It became a functional space that helped support its own survival. A quiet survivor. Today, Compton Place remains under private ownership, with limited public access. It is no longer a center of political power, but its presence still commands respect. The surrounding grounds have also evolved. Portions of the land are now home to the Royal Eastbourne Golf Club, founded in 1887 and historically linked to the Cavendish family. Though altered by time, Compton Place stands as a reminder that survival often requires compromise. Elegance without excess. Compton Place shows another face of old money. It is not dramatic like Lismore. It is not expansive like Chatsworth. Instead, it represents control, restraint, and quiet intelligence. Its walls have seen politics, royalty, tragedy, education, and reinvention. Through it all, the Cavendish family adapted, never abandoning the estate, never allowing it to fall into ruin. And with that, we reach the final chapter of our journey. In the next and final part, we travel to the windswept coast of Cumbria to explore a house reborn from fire, a place where tradition meets modern creativity. Holker Hall and the modern future of the Cavendish legacy. As the Cavendish story reaches its final chapter, we leave behind castles and political houses and travel west, toward the sea, the wind, and open skies. Here, in the coastal countryside of Cumbria, stands a place shaped not only by history, but by resilience. This place is Holker Hall. Holker Hall may not be as internationally famous as Chatsworth, nor as dramatic as Lismore Castle, but it may be the most revealing estate of all. It shows what happens when old money is forced to change, and chooses to do so wisely. This is where tradition meets modern life. How Holker became a Cavendish home. The Cavendish connection to Holker began in 1756, once again through marriage. The estate entered the family when Lord George Augustus Cavendish acquired it through a union with the Lowther family, creating a bond that has lasted for more than 2.5 centuries. But Holker's story reaches even further back. The land was once owned by Cartmel Priory before passing into private hands following the dissolution of the monasteries in the 1530s. Over time, ownership passed through families such as the Prestons and the Lowthers, each leaving their mark on the estate. When Holker finally became Cavendish property, it was already rich with history, but its most defining moment had yet to come: fire, loss, and a bold rebirth. In 1871, disaster struck. A devastating fire tore through Holker Hall, destroying the entire west wing and leaving the house badly damaged. For many families, such destruction would have meant retreat or abandonment. But William Cavendish, the 7th Duke of Devonshire, saw opportunity in the ashes. Instead of restoring the house exactly as it had been, he chose to rebuild it on a grander scale. He commissioned the architects Paley and Austin of Lancaster to redesign the damaged sections in a bold neo-Elizabethan style. The rebuilt Holker Hall emerged in rich red sandstone, combining historic charm with modern comfort. It was not a copy of the past, it was a statement about survival. A house designed to be lived in. Unlike some aristocratic homes that feel frozen in time, Holker Hall was rebuilt to function as a family home. The interiors balance elegance with warmth. Family portraits line the walls, including a remarkable self-portrait by Anthony van Dyck, reminding visitors that art at Holker is personal, not just decorative. The library houses books once owned by Henry Cavendish, reflecting the family's long connection to science, learning, and intellectual curiosity. Every room tells a story, not just of wealth, but of continuity. A new generation takes the lead. In 2014, stewardship of Holker passed to Lucy Cavendish, daughter of Lord Cavendish. Though she was not the eldest child, her deep emotional connection to the estate and her creative vision made her the natural successor. Lucy represents a new kind of aristocratic leadership. She is focused heavily on sustainability, local craftsmanship, and community involvement. Under her guidance, Holker has embraced environmental responsibility while strengthening its economic future. This is not old money clinging to power. This is old money evolving, an estate that works for the future. Today, the wider Holker estate covers roughly 177,000 acres across the Cartmel Peninsula. It supports a wide range of businesses and activities, including farming and forestry, quarrying and land management, residential property and development, holiday parks and tourism, hospitality venues and event hosting. At the heart of it all remains Holker Hall itself, now home to Lucy Cavendish and her husband Tom McLaren. The estate's award-winning gardens are among its greatest treasures. Thanks to the region's unique coastal microclimate, exotic plants thrive here, creating lush landscapes rarely seen in northern England. Farming, food, and craftsmanship. Despite its beauty, agriculture remains central to Holker's identity. The estate produces high-quality local goods, including artisan cheeses, estate honey, and the celebrated Holker Saltmarsh lamb, prized for its flavor and sustainability. These products reflect the estate's philosophy: quality over quantity, care over speed. This commitment to excellence keeps Holker grounded in the land that supports it: festivals, visitors, and community. Holker Hall is no longer a private retreat hidden behind gates. Each year, the estate comes alive with events that welcome the public, including the Holker Garden Festival, often called the Chelsea of the North, seasonal food markets, artisan fairs, and the festive winter market, which draws visitors from across the region. These gatherings celebrate local producers, gardeners, and craftspeople while strengthening ties between the estate and the surrounding community. Holker is not isolated from modern life. It is part of it. What the Cavendish story teaches us. From Chatsworth to Bolton Abbey, from Lismore Castle to Compton Place, and finally to Holker Hall, one truth becomes clear. Old money is not about excess. It is about planning, patience, and adaptation. The Cavendish family survived where many others failed because they understood something simple but powerful. Wealth must move, change, and serve a purpose, or it disappears. They invested in land, they welcomed the public, they adapted to taxes, war, and modern economics. They turned heritage into responsibility, a legacy still being written. The Cavendish estates are not finished stories. They continue to evolve with each generation, shaped by new challenges and new ideas. These homes are not monuments to the past. They are bridges between centuries. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. Old money does not survive by hiding behind walls. It survives by opening doors. Final thought. Now we ask you, have you ever visited any of these remarkable Cavendish estates? Which one speaks to you most? Chatsworth's grandeur, Bolton Abbey's calm, Lismore's drama, Compton Place's restraint, or Holker's creativity. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for joining us for another journey through old money mansions. Until next time, cheers. Long before theme parks, castles, and animated worlds became part of everyday life, Walt Disney lived in a house that felt like it had stepped straight out of a fairy tale. Tucked quietly into the hills of Los Angeles, this home was not loud or flashy. It did not scream fame or power. Instead, it whispered imagination. This was Walt Disney's storybook mansion, a place where creativity rested after long days at the studio. It was a house built not just with wood and stone, but with dreams, patience, and storytelling woven into every corner. For Walt Disney, this mansion was never meant to be a symbol of wealth. It was meant to feel warm, comforting, and magical, just like the stories he shared with the world. This home reflected who he truly was, a dreamer who believed magic should feel personal. Walt Disney's life in the early 1930s. In the early 1930s, Walt Disney was not yet the global legend we know today. He was successful, but his future was still uncertain. Animation was risky. Full-length animated films had never truly worked before. Many people believed cartoons were only good for short laughs, not serious storytelling. But Walt Disney believed otherwise. At the same time, America was struggling. The Great Depression had shaken the country. Jobs were scarce. Money was tight. Even successful people lived carefully, never knowing what tomorrow might bring. Despite this uncertain world, Walt Disney was dreaming bigger than ever, choosing the land in Los Feliz. In the early 1930s, Walt Disney purchased a quiet piece of land in Los Feliz, a peaceful neighborhood near Griffith Park in Los Angeles. This area offered rolling hills, fresh air, and distance from the noise of Hollywood. For Walt, location mattered deeply. He wanted a place where his family could feel safe, a place where his daughters could grow up surrounded by nature, a place where he could think, imagine, and relax after long nights of creative work. This land was not chosen by accident. From the hills, one could see wide views of Los Angeles, stretching toward the city and beyond. The setting felt calm, almost storybook itself, perfect for a man whose mind never stopped creating worlds. Building a home, not a monument. Once the land was secured, Walt Disney moved quickly to build a home, but his vision was very clear. He did not want a cold mansion. He did not want a grand palace meant to impress strangers. He wanted a family home that felt alive. Construction began soon after, and by 1932, the storybook mansion was complete. From the start, Walt Disney imagined the house as a place where imagination could breathe. Every wall, window, and detail needed to feel welcoming, not intimidating. The architect behind the magic. To bring his vision to life, Walt Disney worked with renowned architect Frank Crowhurst. Frank Crowhurst was known for his ability to blend historic European styles with modern comfort. He understood how to create homes that felt both grand and personal at the same time. Together, Walt Disney and Frank Crowhurst designed a house that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale, but functioned perfectly for real life. This balance was key. A true storybook design. The mansion was designed in a storybook architectural style, a popular trend in the 1920s and 1930s. This style borrowed heavily from fairy tales, medieval cottages, and old European villages. Instead of straight lines and sharp edges, the home featured soft curves, sloping roofs, decorative chimneys, small towers, and turrets. Nothing about the house felt stiff or boring. The structure looked playful, almost as if it had grown naturally from the land. To visitors, it felt like a place where magical characters might step outside at any moment. A blend of old-world styles. The mansion did not follow just one design tradition. Instead, it blended several classic styles into one harmonious whole. The home drew inspiration from French provincial country homes, Tudor architecture, neo-Gothic design. Each style added its own personality. The French elements brought elegance. The Tudor features added warmth. The Gothic touches gave the house mystery and depth. Together, they created a home that felt timeless, neither old nor modern, but perfectly balanced. A home built. During the Great Depression, one of the most surprising facts about Walt Disney's storybook mansion is when it was built. Construction happened during the Great Depression, a time when millions of Americans were unemployed and struggling. But this difficult moment also created an unusual opportunity. Because jobs were scarce, many highly skilled craftsmen were eager to work. Woodworkers, glass artists, stone masons, and painters all found employment on Disney's home. Materials were also more affordable during this time. As a result, the mansion was built quickly, in just about 10 weeks. A small fortune, carefully spent. The total cost of building the home was around $50,000 at the time. Today, that would be roughly $1 million after adjusting for inflation. This might sound expensive, but for a home of this quality and detail, it was surprisingly reasonable. At any given moment, between 50 and 100 workers were involved in construction. Every detail mattered, handcrafted details everywhere. Unlike many modern homes built with speed and machines, Walt Disney's house was crafted almost entirely by hand. Workers carved wooden beams by hand, painted detailed ceiling murals, installed stained glass piece by piece, shaped stone and brick carefully. One of the most impressive features was the circular staircase in the foyer. This staircase became a centerpiece of the home, welcoming guests with elegance and flow. The stained glass windows were not simple decorations. Each piece was carefully placed, allowing light to enter the home in colorful, magical patterns. Life inside the mansion. After the home was finished in 1932, Walt Disney moved in with his wife, Lillian Disney, and their two daughters, Diane Disney and Sharon Disney. This house became their family sanctuary for 18 years. Inside these walls, the Disney family laughed, rested, and lived normal lives, far from the spotlight. To the children, it was simply home. To Walt, it was a place where his imagination could recharge. A creative explosion begins. While living in this house, Walt Disney entered one of the most important periods of his career. Inside this home, he worked on ideas that would change entertainment forever. It was during these years that Walt Disney created Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the first full-length animated feature film, other early studio successes that shaped animation history. After long days at the studio, he returned home to a space that reflected the same magic he was creating on screen. The house did not distract him. It inspired him. A house that felt like a fairy tale. From the outside, the mansion looked like something from a storybook illustration. The turrets and gabled roofs made it feel like a small castle hidden in the hills. Nothing about the house felt harsh or cold. The design invited curiosity. It felt friendly, almost alive. This was not accidental. Walt Disney believed that environments shape emotions. He wanted his home to feel hopeful, warm, and imaginative, and it did. Inside the fairy tale walls, stepping inside Walt Disney's storybook mansion felt very different from walking into most Hollywood homes of the time. Instead of cold marble halls or stiff formal rooms, the interior welcomed people with warmth, color, and comfort. This was not a house designed to impress strangers. It was a house designed to feel lived in. Every room told a story. Every corner carried intention, and nothing felt accidental. The grand entrance and foyer. As guests entered the mansion, they were immediately greeted by a sense of quiet wonder. The foyer did not overwhelm visitors with size, but it did capture attention with detail. The most striking feature was the circular staircase. Unlike straight staircases that simply move people upward, this staircase flowed gently, guiding the eye and body in a soft curve. It felt graceful, almost theatrical, yet never dramatic. The staircase symbolized movement, imagination, and progress. For Walt Disney, motion was life. Animation itself was movement, and this staircase quietly reflected that belief. Stained glass that told stories. Light entered the foyer through beautifully crafted stained glass windows. These windows were not bright or flashy. Instead, they filtered sunlight into gentle colors that shifted throughout the day. Morning light felt warm and golden. Afternoon light felt calm and peaceful. Evening light felt soft and reflective. Each stained glass panel was carefully designed and hand-installed. The colors were chosen to complement the woodwork and stone rather than overpower them. This play of light helped the house feel alive, changing mood with the time of day. much like scenes in a film. The power of handcrafted woodwork. One of the most defining features of the mansion's interior was its woodwork. Throughout the house, walls, ceilings, and doorways were lined with carved wooden details. These were not factory-made decorations. Skilled craftsmen shaped every beam and panel by hand. The wood brought warmth to every space. Beamed ceilings made rooms feel grounded and cozy. Carved panels added texture and depth. Built-in cabinetry blended beauty with function. This craftsmanship gave the home an old-world charm, making it feel as if it had existed for generations, even though it was newly built. The living room, the heart of the home. At the center of the mansion was the grand living room, a space designed for gathering, conversation, and quiet evenings. The ceiling rose high above, supported by exposed wooden beams that added strength and character. Large windows lined the walls, allowing sunlight to pour into the room. From these windows, the family could look out toward the backyard and even see parts of downtown Los Angeles in the distance. Despite its size, the room felt inviting, not formal. A fireplace that brought everyone together. The focal point of the living room was a large fireplace built with stone and careful detail. This fireplace was not just decorative, it was meant to be used. On cool evenings, the Disney family would gather around the fire. Walt Disney often sat quietly, thinking or sketching ideas in his mind. Lillian Disney created a sense of calm and balance, grounding the family. For Diane Disney and Sharon Disney, the fireplace meant warmth, safety, and home. Ceilings that told. Silent stories. One of the most surprising features inside the mansion was the ceilings. Instead of plain white surfaces, many rooms featured painted or vaulted ceilings. Some had exposed beams arranged in artistic patterns. Others included subtle painted designs that added personality without distraction. These ceilings created a feeling of depth and imagination. People often don't look up, but in this house, looking up was part of the experience. The ceilings reminded visitors that creativity does not belong only on walls or screens. It belongs everywhere. A home built for family, not fame. Unlike many Hollywood homes filled with rooms that went unused, Walt Disney's mansion was designed for daily life. Rooms flowed naturally into one another. There were no sharp separations between show spaces and private spaces. Everything felt connected. This design choice reflected Walt Disney's personality. He believed storytelling should feel natural, not forced. His home followed the same philosophy. The dining room, elegant but comfortable. One wing of the house featured a beautiful dining room, designed for family meals as well as guests. Large French doors opened directly to the outdoors, allowing fresh air and garden views to enter the space. This connection between inside and outside made meals feel relaxed and peaceful. Above, the ceiling was decorated with painted details, set between interlaced wooden beams. The artwork was subtle, never distracting, but always present. Meals here were about connection, not ceremony. The kitchen, a functional masterpiece. Just beyond the dining room was the eat-in kitchen, a space designed for both cooking and gathering. At the center stood a large island, giving the room balance and flow. Countertops were made of smooth marble, while custom cabinetry provided both beauty and storage. Stained glass windows added character, filtering light into the room while maintaining privacy. This kitchen was not designed to impress guests. It was designed to work. It was practical, warm, and filled with quiet charm. A home that blended art and comfort. Throughout the house, artisanal tile work, custom light fixtures, and hand-painted details added layers of personality. No two rooms felt exactly the same. Each space had its own mood, shaped by light, color, and texture. The design never shouted. Instead, it whispered creativity, a place where magic could rest. After long days at the studio, Walt Disney returned to this home not to work, but to breathe. This mansion was where ideas settled, where imagination rested before being reborn on screen. It was not filled with Disney characters on every wall. Instead, the magic was subtle, woven into architecture, light, and craftsmanship. This balance made the home timeless. Why this house mattered so much. For Walt Disney, this house represented a turning point in his life. He was no longer a struggling animator. He was no longer chasing survival, but he also wasn't chasing excess. Instead, he chose a home that reflected who he was becoming, a storyteller with responsibility, vision, and heart. Private rooms, creative rituals, and family life. As much as Walt Disney's storybook mansion felt magical to visitors, its most meaningful spaces were the private ones. These were the rooms where the Disney family lived their everyday lives, far from cameras, crowds, and expectations. Behind the fairy tale exterior was a deeply personal home shaped around routine, comfort, and quiet creativity. For Walt Disney, privacy was essential. His work demanded constant imagination, and imagination needed calm. This house gave him exactly that. The upstairs world of the Disney family. The second floor of the mansion was designed as a retreat from the outside world. Unlike the open and social spaces below, the upstairs rooms were more intimate, softer in tone, and meant only for family. Here, the ceilings lowered slightly, creating a sense of closeness. Light entered gently through windows placed to frame trees and sky rather than streets or buildings. The goal was peace, not distraction. This separation between public and private space reflected how Walt Disney lived his life. He gave the world his ideas, but he guarded his inner life carefully. The master bedroom, quiet and grounded. The master bedroom, shared by Walt Disney and Lillian Disney, was not extravagant. It was calm, orderly, and warm. The room reflected Lillian's steady influence on the family. While Walt was imaginative and driven, Lillian brought balance and structure. The design avoided excess decoration. Soft colors, gentle light, and thoughtful furniture placement created an atmosphere of rest. This was a room meant for recovery after long days, not display. Attached to the bedroom was a bathroom designed with comfort in mind. Dual vanities allowed space for daily routines, while a large shower and central bathtub emphasized relaxation rather than luxury. Everything served a purpose, and nothing felt unnecessary. A home built around routine. Despite his creative genius, Walt Disney lived by routine. He believed discipline supported imagination, not limited it. The layout of the home supported this belief. Morning light filled the bedrooms early, encouraging natural waking hours. Hallways flowed easily, making movement through the house smooth and unhurried. Nothing felt rushed or chaotic. This structure helped Walt Disney return to his work each day focused and clear-minded. Bedrooms for Diane and Sharon. The bedrooms of Diane Disney and Sharon Disney were designed to feel safe, playful, and personal. These were not formal children's rooms meant to impress guests. They were real spaces for growing up. Natural light, cozy proportions, and thoughtful details gave the rooms warmth. From these rooms, the girls could look out onto the gardens and hills, reinforcing a sense of openness and freedom. Their father may have built imaginary worlds for millions of children, but for his own daughters, he focused on something simpler. He gave them stability. Thou, family room, where evenings came together. One of the most cherished spaces on the upper level was the family room, a place where the Disneys gathered at the end of the day. This room featured vaulted ceilings that added height without making the space feel cold. Soft furnishings and warm materials encouraged long conversations, quiet reading, and shared moments. It was here that the family relaxed together, away from deadlines and studio pressures. For Walt Disney, these evenings mattered deeply. They reminded him why he worked so hard and who he was working for. The sleeping porch, a breath of nature. Connected to the family room was a former sleeping porch, a feature common in homes built before modern air conditioning. This porch allowed fresh air to flow freely, especially during warm California nights. From this space, the family could hear nighttime sounds and feel cool breezes drifting through the hills. It connected the indoors with the natural world outside, creating a sense of calm that technology could not replace. This porch reflected an older way of living, one rooted in patience and simplicity. It was a reminder that comfort did not always come from innovation, but from understanding nature. Walt Disney's private theater. One of the most fascinating rooms in the house was Walt Disney's private theater. This was not a grand cinema filled with velvet seats and gold trim. It was practical, personal, and deeply connected to his work. In this room, Walt Disney watched daily film footage from the studio. He reviewed scenes, studied animation movement, and reflected on stories in progress. Sometimes he screened finished films before their release. This space allowed him to see his work away from the pressure of the studio. Here, films were not business products. They were stories. The theater symbolized how closely his home life and creative life were connected. A place to think without noise. What made this house truly special was not any single room, but the environment as a whole. The mansion protected Walt Disney's creativity by surrounding him with calm rather than chaos. The hills blocked city noise. The gardens softened the air. The architecture encouraged reflection. This atmosphere allowed ideas to form naturally. Walt Disney did not force imagination. He allowed its space to grow. The cottage where childhood lived. Outside the main house stood a small play cottage where Diane Disney and Sharon Disney spent countless hours. This tiny structure was built just for them, scaled to a child's world. Here, they played games, imagined adventures, and lived stories of their own. For Walt Disney, this cottage represented something deeply important. It showed his belief that childhood imagination deserved respect. This small building still remains on the property today, unchanged in spirit, even as the world around it has evolved. A house that balanced genius and normal life. Despite his fame, Walt Disney wanted his home life to feel ordinary. He did not want his children growing up inside a monument to success. He wanted them to grow up inside a family. This balance is what made the Storybook Mansion so powerful. It held greatness without showing off. It supported creativity without demanding attention. In this house, Walt Disney was not a legend. He was a husband, a father, and a storyteller preparing for the next dream. Gardens, growth, and the decision to leave. While the interior of Walt Disney's Storybook Mansion reflected imagination and calm, the outdoor spaces completed the story. The land surrounding the house was not treated as decoration. It was an extension of the home itself, shaped to offer peace, inspiration, and room to breathe. The property sat on a little more than an acre of land, nestled into the gentle hills of Los Feliz. From nearly every angle, the house felt protected by nature. Trees softened the edges of the structure, and gardens framed the home like a living picture. For Walt Disney, the outdoors mattered just as much as the rooms inside. A landscape designed for calm. The gardens surrounding the mansion were carefully planned, not overly formal and not wild or neglected. They were designed to feel natural, as if the house had always belonged there. Flower beds added soft color without overwhelming the senses. Trees provided shade and privacy. Pathways encouraged slow walks rather than hurried movement. This landscape helped slow time. After intense days at the studio, Walt Disney often found relief simply by being outside. The quiet of the garden allowed his thoughts to settle. Ideas that felt tangled indoors often became clear once he stepped into the open air. A space for family and reflection. The outdoor areas were not built for large parties or public gatherings. They were meant for family life. Lillian Disney spent time tending to plants and enjoying the peace of the garden. She valued beauty that felt useful and grounding, and the landscape gave her that balance. For Diane Disney and Sharon Disney, the grounds were a place to explore. They played freely, ran between trees, and created their own small adventures just steps away from the house. This connection to nature helped the children grow up with a sense of freedom that was rare in Hollywood families. The driveway and arrival experience. The driveway leading to the mansion curved gently, guiding visitors toward the home rather than pointing straight at it. This design choice softened the sense of arrival. Instead of a dramatic entrance meant to impress, the approach felt welcoming. It was as if the house revealed itself slowly, allowing guests time to absorb its charm. This reflected Walt Disney's belief that the best stories unfold gradually. Nothing needed to be rushed. Changes over time. As years passed, the property changed in small but meaningful ways. After the Disney family moved out, some portions of the original land were sold, reducing the size of the estate. A swimming pool was later added to the property, reflecting the changing lifestyles of future owners. While the pool was not part of Walt Disney's original vision, it was placed in a way that respected the existing layout. Despite these changes, the soul of the property remained intact, the cottage that stayed behind. One of the most touching details of the estate is that the small play cottage built for Diane Disney and Sharon Disney still remains on the property. Even as ownership changed and renovations occurred, this tiny structure was preserved. It stands as a quiet reminder of childhood laughter and simple joy. For many people, this cottage feels just as meaningful as the mansion itself. It represents Walt Disney's belief that imagination begins early and deserves space to grow. Why the house was no longer enough. By the late 1940s, Walt Disney's life had changed dramatically. His studio had grown larger, his responsibilities had multiplied, his ambitions had expanded beyond films into new and untested ideas. At the same time, the needs of his family were evolving. Lillian Disney wanted more space for gardening. She dreamed of land where she could truly immerse herself in nature. Walt Disney, on the other hand, had developed a new passion: model trains. The dream of a backyard railroad. One of Walt Disney's lesser-known passions was railroads. Trains fascinated him. He saw them not just as machines, but as moving stories. He wanted to build a rideable miniature train in his backyard, complete with tracks, tunnels, and landscapes. The Storybook Mansion's property, beautiful as it was, simply did not offer enough space for this dream. This desire was not childish. It was deeply connected to his creative process. Trains represented movement, progress, and connection, themes that later shaped Disneyland itself. The move to Holmby Hills. In 1950, the Disney family made the decision to leave their beloved Storybook Mansion. They moved to a much larger estate in Holmby Hills, often referred to as a mega mansion. This new home provided more land, space for gardens, room for the backyard railroad. The move was not about status. It was about practicality and future vision. Still, leaving the Los Feliz house was emotional. Closing a chapter. For Walt Disney, the Storybook Mansion marked a specific chapter of his life. It was the place where he proved full-length animation could succeed. It was where his children spent their early years. It was where ideas quietly formed before changing the world. When the family left, they did not leave behind failure or regret. They left behind fulfillment. The house had done its job. A home that never lost its meaning. Even after the Disneys moved out, the mansion continued to be recognized as something special. New owners respected its history. Renovations focused on preservation rather than reinvention. The architecture still spoke of imagination. The rooms still carried warmth. The gardens still softened the land. The home never became just another Hollywood property. Why this house still matters. The Storybook Mansion matters because it shows a different side of Walt Disney. It reveals a man who valued quiet as much as applause, family as much as fame, and patience as much as ambition. This house was not built to celebrate success. It was built to support creativity. And in doing so, it became part of history. After Walt Disney, ownership changes and a living legacy. When Walt Disney passed away in 1966, the world mourned the loss of a visionary who had reshaped entertainment forever. Yet, long before his death, he had already moved on from the Storybook Mansion in Los Feliz. Still, the house remained deeply tied to his story, quietly carrying the memory of the years when his greatest ideas first took shape. After the Disney family left in 1950, the mansion entered a new phase of its life. Like many historic homes connected to famous figures, it would pass through different hands, each owner leaving a small mark while inheriting a much larger legacy. A house that refused to become ordinary. Even as time passed, the mansion never lost its identity. While many Hollywood homes were torn down or heavily remodeled, this one stood apart. Its architecture was too distinctive to ignore, and its connection to Walt Disney gave it a meaning beyond real estate value. New owners understood that this was not just a building, it was a piece of cultural history. The challenge was finding a way to modernize the home without erasing the personality that made it special. Fortunately, most changes were done with care. Renovations that respected the past. Over the decades, the house underwent several renovations and refurbishments. These updates focused on improving comfort and functionality, rather than changing the spirit of the home. Modern systems were added quietly, hidden behind original walls and beams. Kitchens and bathrooms were updated to meet contemporary standards, but the handcrafted woodwork, stained glass, and architectural details were preserved. The goal was not to transform the mansion into something new, it was to help it survive. This careful approach allowed the home to remain recognizable, even as it adapted to modern living. The surrounding land grows smaller. As Los Angeles expanded and property values increased, portions of the original land were eventually sold. What was once a more secluded estate became part of a denser neighborhood. Despite this change, the mansion still retained a sense of privacy. Mature trees and thoughtful landscaping continued to shield it from the outside world. Though the land shrank, the house itself remained emotionally large, still carrying the weight of its history. A symbol within Disney history. As the years passed, historians and Disney enthusiasts began to see the Storybook Mansion as more than a former residence. It became a symbol of a critical moment in Walt Disney's life. This was the house where he lived while releasing films like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, and Bambi. These movies did not just succeed, they defined what animation could be. Knowing that these ideas were formed while Walt Disney walked these halls added depth to his story. It reminded people that creativity does not come from studios alone, but from quiet places where thoughts can grow. Recognition, beyond the Disney world. The mansion gradually gained recognition as a historical and cultural landmark, even without formal museum status. Its value was not measured by ticket sales or exhibitions, but by influence. Architecture lovers admired its rare storybook design. Historians respected its preservation. Fans of Walt Disney viewed it as a sacred space where imagination once lived in its most human form. The house became a bridge between fantasy and reality. A new owner with a creative eye. In more recent years, the Storybook Mansion found a new owner in Timur Bekmambetov, a well-known film director. His ownership felt fitting. As a filmmaker himself, Timur Bekmambetov understood the importance of creative spaces. He recognized that environments shape storytelling, and that this house was built by someone who deeply understood that truth. Rather than reinvent the mansion, he maintained its historic character while allowing it to function as a modern home. This respectful stewardship helped preserve the house's emotional authenticity. Why the mansion still captivates people. People remain fascinated by the Storybook Mansion, not because it is the largest or most expensive home in Los Angeles, but because it feels honest. It represents a time when Walt Disney was still proving himself, still taking risks, and still building his legacy one idea at a time. The house reminds us that greatness often grows quietly before it is recognized loudly. Standing there, one can imagine Walt Disney thinking through stories, adjusting scenes in his mind, and wondering if audiences would believe in his dreams. A living piece of imagination. Unlike museums frozen in time, the Storybook Mansion remains a living home. People still move through its rooms. Light still filters through its stained glass. Wind still passes through its trees. This continued life keeps the house relevant. It does not exist only in memory. It exists in the present. And because of that, it continues to inspire why this house matters more than ever. In an age of digital screens and fast creativity, the Storybook Mansion reminds us of something important. True imagination needs space, patience, and calm. Walt Disney did not create his greatest works in chaos. He created them in a home that protected his focus and supported his family. This house proves that environments matter. The story still unfolds. Though decades have passed since Walt Disney last lived there, the Storybook Mansion continues to tell its story. It speaks through architecture, through silence, and through the ideas it once nurtured. It stands as proof that even legends need a place to rest, reflect, and begin again. The house that protected a dream. When people think of Walt Disney, they often picture castles, fireworks, and theme parks filled with color and noise. But long before those worlds existed, there was a quiet house in Los Feliz where ideas were allowed to grow slowly and safely. The Storybook Mansion was never meant to be a monument to success. It was meant to be a refuge. This home stood during a fragile moment in Walt Disney's life, when his dreams were bold but unproven, and failure still felt possible. Inside these walls, he carried the weight of risk, responsibility, and doubt. Yet the house never reflected fear. Instead, it offered calm, warmth, and stability when he needed it most. A space where imagination could breathe. The storybook mansion mattered because it did not demand anything from its owner. It did not ask Walt Disney to impress guests or display his achievements. It simply gave him space. Space to think. Space to rest. Space to imagine what had never been done before. The soft curves of the architecture, the filtered light through stained glass, and the quiet gardens outside all worked together to slow the pace of life. In that stillness, ideas became clearer, stories found shape, dreams became plans. This was not accidental. Walt Disney understood that imagination needed protection. The house became that protection. The balance between family and vision. Inside the storybook mansion, Walt Disney was not just a creator. He was a husband to Lillian Disney and a father to Diane Disney and Sharon Disney. The home allowed these roles to exist side by side without conflict. Family life grounded him. Routine gave him structure. The house made room for both. This balance is what allowed his work to endure. His stories were not born from isolation, but from a life filled with connection, responsibility, and love. The warmth people feel in Disney films did not come from fantasy alone. It came from a real home where those values were lived every day. A house that marked a turning point. The years spent in the storybook mansion marked a turning point in entertainment history. It was during this time that animation proved it could tell deep, emotional, and lasting stories. It was during this time that Walt Disney moved from experimenter to pioneer. The house did not create those achievements, but it supported them quietly. It stood behind the scenes, doing what great homes do best. It held life steady while history unfolded. Why the mansion still speaks today. Even now, decades later, the storybook mansion continues to resonate with people. Not because it is open to the public, but because its meaning is easy to understand. It represents a truth that often gets forgotten. Great ideas are not born in constant noise. They are born in places where the mind feels safe. This house reminds us that behind every great legacy is a private space where doubt was faced, patience was practiced, and belief was tested. The legacy beyond the walls. While Walt Disney eventually moved on to larger projects and grander visions, the influence of this home never left him. The love of detail, the respect for environment, and the belief that surroundings shape emotion would later appear in Disneyland itself. In many ways, the storybook mansion was a prototype, not for a park, but for a philosophy. A belief that places matter. A belief that storytelling begins long before an audience arrives. A belief that imagination deserves care. A quiet landmark of American creativity. The storybook mansion stands today as a quiet landmark, not marked by signs or crowds, but by meaning. It does not need explanation. Its walls carry their own story. It is a reminder that legends are human before they are icons. That before the world believed in Walt Disney, he believed in his stories while sitting in a house that felt like a fairy tale come to life. The final thought. When we look at Walt Disney's storybook mansion, we are not just looking at a house. We are looking at a moment when imagination was still fragile, when success was not guaranteed, and when creativity needed shelter. This house gave that shelter, and because of that, it holds a quiet place in history, standing not as a symbol of fame, but as a guardian of a dream that changed the world. Closing reflection. After seeing where Walt Disney lived during one of the most important periods of his life, the question remains, was the house as magical as you imagined, or was it even more powerful because it was simple, warm, and human?